goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-hosts and filmmakers, John and Elaine Woolscroft.
And we drink from your milkshake.
Well, maybe he does.
Yeah, maybe you do. So we're on episode number 27.
Yeah, we're in those ages nobody cares about.
Yeah, we're
getting into the episodes now where we have to try to remember 27.
Yeah, we are. Once we get to maybe like 50, we're just gonna be like, fuck it.
No more numbers.
I mean, we have to number them, but it might be something that maybe we record like later, and it's just like that thing I do like right before I put the thing out. I'm like, oh yeah, you're on episode number 155.
I hope we make it to 155, and we're.
I hope so
hateful.
too.
No, I think we should start doing this show in Roman numerals. We're on episode XXVII.
Yeah, figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out. So, how was your guys' week?
Good.
Good?
Super good.
Do anything eventful? Meh?
No.
Not really?
As usual, I just sat in a room and waited to do this again.
How dare
Cried
you?
myself to sleep in the
We
tub.
went pumpkin patching.
I saw the pictures. They look hilarious.
They were hilarious. Those weren't even the best ones.
You see, John, when you have a Twitter, what you would do would be you would take those hilarious pumpkin patch pictures and post them on said Twitter.
How dare you? Those are not hilarious. Those are deeply erotic.
What a time to be alive.
Both. But I'm just saying, that's what Twitter allows you to do. So we would talk about it on the show.
The future
You'd post
is now.
the pictures up. See, not giving you ideas or anything like that. Pumpkin erotica. There you go.
You're filling my head full of bad ideas.
Yeah,
The
but
Pumpkin King.
That's a
that.
subreddit, I'm sure. Pumpkin erotica.
Pumpkin
Yeah,
erotica.
I'm
So
sure.
yeah, my week was kind of hectic. I was editing the 48-hour horror film festival.
How was that? The editing, I mean.
The editing's not bad. This actually was the second film festival in probably about, I'd say, a month that I was doing.
Oh, wow.
Because I was also editing the Pittsburgh Cut Film Festival.
Oh, cool.
You hear about that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the festival in circumcision.
No.
Oh,
it's
no.
not.
Sorry.
It's another type of like horror type festival.
Cool.
But I was editing that, and then like almost immediately after I was doing that, I was editing the 48-hour horror, and I kind of discovered. I don't know if I should mention this, but I think it's just hilarious.
Do it.
Because you ever know how when you're... I was at the kickoff, okay, for the 48-hour horror film festival. I posted it on like Instagram. You can find videos of the shit, and I was people watching because I was just kind of sitting there waiting for people to come up to me to ask me about, editing stuff. What parameters, what codecs, all the fun stuff that filmmakers like to think about, but maybe don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of, like the tech stuff. You would agree with that, right?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
some people are into that, some people aren't.
Yeah,
okay?
it's not my thing.
Oh, it's still something you should know. The parameters of how you should do this.
Yeah,
Just
so
don't enjoy it.
I was sitting there just kind of minding my own business. It was a long day after work, and I just started people watched. And I found out that, and I don't know if this is everywhere, but that film people come in 3 varieties.
Ooh, tell me more.
Okay. And I want to be
Strawberry,
honest.
vanilla, and chocolate.
No, I'm serious. I kind of was able to look around. I was like, you know what? They're all the same in the 3 categories. So I found out that there are 3 categories. The 3 categories are 1, the chic hipster filmmaker. Okay, this is the filmmaker who comes in typically with a clean-shaven look, maybe some sort of ruggedness. Maybe they got a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow. Usually wearing some sort of flannel and tight pants and some sort of pompadour-looking hair thing. Some sort of grease. They got some grease going on.
Yeah.
I have a boner.
Okay? So the chic guy. The guy who maybe is I hang out in Lawrenceville.
Okay.
And, I like my microbrews. But, I can't pull off a full beard. Okay? So you have that
This is
type.
getting catty. I like it.
But here's the thing. I want to say this. This is all with love. Okay? Because I'm sure we all fall into those categories. And this is nothing against any of those people.
Well, I don't have a 5 o'clock shadow or a flannel,
right.
so
But I'm
hear
just
the other
saying.
categories.
I'm not saying this as an insult. I just noticed this while I was watching. Okay. Okay, so that's the first category, the chic hipster filmmaker. Okay. The second one I like to dub the Mother's Basement mutant filmmaker.
Met plenty of them in undergrad.
Okay.
Grad school. Yeah.
And I think I'm part of that Mother's Basement mutant filmmaker. Okay.
Mother's Basement.
I would say I kind of am the weird odd man out because I'm not quite the Mother's Basement mutant. But what was funny was like I'm looking around, these guys are waiting, for the kickoff. They're just kind of like mouth open, slack jaw, just looking around.
All wearing an Adventure Time t-shirt.
They were wearing some sort of pop culture shirt.
You have a lot of pop culture shirts, John. So
Yeah, that's
you
what I'm
can
saying.
knock
That's what I'm
that
saying.
down.
We might fall in this.
I'm a giant man
category,
child.
okay?
Yeah.
But they're pretty much like very unkempt.
No social humor.
No, none, none. Okay, and that's why I say the Mother's Basement. And it's, as I'm saying, it's not an insult. I'm just saying this is what I noticed here. Okay, so you slack
I'm sure they
jawed.
couldn't possibly take that as an insult. But
I'm sorry.
Hey, the truth hurts.
The
Third
truth hurts.
type of
Third
human.
type is the film school Steven Spielberg type. This is the guy who comes in usually wearing a beard. This is the
So
guy
like
who
your
does
Dawson
that.
Leary, huh?
Yeah. He's got the beard going. He's also wearing flannel, but he's not nearly as fashion forward as the chic hipster.
Pants aren't as
are you
tight.
talking like 70s Lucas here?
Yes.
Like
Oh my god!
Yeah.
The image that just gave me.
And always
boner.
wearing baseball cap. There was always a baseball cap.
Hence
Yeah.
the Spielberg.
Yes, hence the Spielberg baseball / trucker hat. Okay.
Oh, trucker.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of truckers.
Damn it, everyone.
Okay.
that might
So-
fall more into the hipster Lawrenceville filmmaker.
No.
So are we just talking like 50 Shades of douche here?
No. I'm just saying. You've noticed things when you're people watching, and that was one of the things I noticed. I was just like, holy shit.
Well,
We're the most non-diverse group of people out there. And like, I don't know where we would fall. I would say I might fall somewhere between the
2 and 3 for me.
Yeah, I would say 2 and 3 for me.
well, I'm a chick, so none of those.
Oh
would
no,
apply to me
there
at
were some
all.
there were
You're
some
the
chicks
lady
there.
hipster.
The
You're the
lady
female
hipster.
hipster.
There was some chicks. They were like Mother's Basement.
Ooh,
Yeah. So yeah.
well, I think it's douche no matter what way you go. So the douche forest as far as the eye can see.
Hey, the douche does a very cleansing job, makes things smell
It
nice.
does. It really does. But I thought it was hilarious.
Hey, you
And
notice
it's nothing
stuff
against any of them.
But hey, if you
They all
can't-
got their own style,
If you
and they're
can't
great.
laugh at yourself, what are you doing?
And you know what? It takes balls to go ahead and do a 48-hour film. So while I'm people watching, they're busting their ass making a 48-hour film.
True.
So.
Hey, guys, let's talk about Tommy Wiseau.
Guys, we have the best story for news for you guys
News
ever.
bit time.
So
Johnny's back.
the trailer has dropped. The story is out.
Has the trailer dropped for
Tommy,
it?
yeah, Tommy
shit.
Wiseau is in another movie, and it's amazing.
Now, for people who don't know who Tommy Wiseau
oh my
is,
God, get your life, number one.
some people might not. I mean, you gotta.
Get it
Okay,
together is all I
so
have to
please
say.
explain to me who Tommy Wiseau is.
He's
even though I know
a
who
giant
he is
anorexic albino vampire from some part of Europe that only God knows of. I think it was bombed off the map during World War II, and only Tommy lived there.
All right, so for the rest of us who enjoy a shred of logic, Tommy Wiseau directed and starred in the cult classic called The Room.
Yeah.
It's frequently lauded as one of the worst movies of all time.
It's
because
my
it has
favorite
such
film
a
of all time.
strange style of filmmaking, has really weird, performances, and the narrative structure is non-existent. So it is routinely critiqued and ridiculed for that fact. It is, in fact, John's favorite movie. Nothing, including Our Wedding Day, makes him happier than that movie. So
That's kind of sad.
no, it's kind of great.
Granted, I
It's
kind of
okay.
understand.
It's unbelievably amazing.
Yeah, it is somewhat. It's one of those pieces of cinema that's like a train wreck covered in gasoline with small children aboard.
And you can't look away.
And that's
You
what I'm
have to
saying.
see
You
the
just
decay.
you have to watch it.
You have to.
It's one of those things. It comes. I mean, I don't know if it ever comes on I think the only time I can remember it ever coming on TV was when it was on Adult Swim, when they pulled that April Fool's
joke. Yeah,
April Fool's
it's
joke.
more like the midnight screening. It's kind of like a newer version of Rocky Horror, but without like
the music
being good.
part and being good.
Well, yeah, you can watch it and they'll give you like the spoons and stuff, and there's certain things that people like, yell out and everything at certain times during the movie.
If you haven't seen The Room, now not to be mistaken with the movie, the very good movie that came
The
out
good
recently
movie,
called
The Room.
Room.
Yeah.
You have to The Room. Make sure it says directed by Tommy Wiseau. You have to just turn this podcast off. Turn it back on after you see the movie.
Yes, please.
Put it back on, but go watch it immediately.
And if you can't find it,
It's
John will
life-changing.
probably send you his copy.
Yes, if you contact the show, I will send you a copy of the film. Oh, God. What if we get like 500?
Now, of course, there's a lot you have to do to get that copy. Like review it, tell your friends.
It's true.
A lot of friends.
It's true.
If you're a guy, send us a shirtless photo.
Oh, God.
Wear pants.
Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this?
He has to find some kind of mayhem every week.
And we will describe your body.
Didn't
on
we
here.
tell him like last week, please, like tone it down a notch?
We told him to stop picking fights, and now he just wants shirtless pics of
God,
people. No big
okay.
deal. It's fine.
No big whoop.
No big whoop.
Just want some bare
So
chest.
so this
Shitty fight.
so this new film, what is it about?
So it's called Best Friends / Fiends because
It's got like that
best-
7 thing or the Fantastic Four thing, like fan.
It's got parentheses R
there's
between the
there's
friends.
parentheses around the R, so
Yeah.
you can rate it either Best Friends or Best Fiends. Now, Tommy didn't write it or direct it, which is a shame.
Dang.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
But
kind of a shame.
So Greg Sestero, who played the character Mark, for those of you
Mark?
familiar with the film. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Ma.
He actually had written, a tell-all book about being in the room, and that's how he kind of like got
He
his
had it all
fortune.
figured out, Mark.
And people who haven't seen the movie are going to be lost if you keep doing that. Kind of want to punch you.
I know.
But Greg Sestero is also going to be in this, and it looks like he at least wrote the story for this. I'm not sure that he wrote the screenplay.
Well,
Right.
it's funny that he writes this book shitting all over Tommy Wiseau, but the first chance he realizes that he has the opportunity to make a money to turn
Oh,
profit,
yeah.
That's Hollywood.
he goes
That's
immediately
Hollywood,
back to
folks, right
Tommy
there.
Wiseau.
Crawling back in the desert. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
whatever.
And-
The quote from Wiseau about the movie
Oh,
is
God.
after watching...
No, no, read it as him.
No, I don't want to. You read it. as
Okay,
him.
you got it. Yeah.
After watching Best Friends, your mind will find paradise.
I mean, come on. Yeah, we can't make this shit up.
I wonder if he knows what he's saying. Like, if this is all just one big fucking act, and that would make him the greatest actor of all time, or if it's just him.
It's just him, I think.
You don't think he's that talented enough to create this persona of doucheness?
No, because The Room came about because he was just this, this rich guy who came to the U.S. and
Nobody knows where his fortune came from
He is
either.
from somewhere in Europe, but he's independently wealthy, and he came here because he wanted to be a big movie star, and he wanted to make his own film. And Greg Sestero actually, in his tell-all book, kind of described what it was like on the set, but all we really know about Tommy Wiseau is that he wanted to be famous, which I guess kind of like a lot of people.
I mean, that's
know.
And he kind of went in the back door of fame, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's infamous. Aren't they kind of the same thing at this point?
Yeah.
But he just made this as a vanity project, like where some people would go and like buy themselves a yacht. Like he wanted to make a movie, so that's what he put his his money into.
It was kind of like that Friday music video.
Kind of, yeah.
That was kind of like just made because she wanted a music video of herself.
I mean, well, they all... I got the impression that was a bit more manufactured because she was a musician. Like, they made her make the video. But
Right.
But anyway, Tommy financed all that himself, and he did the whole thing himself, and,
Well, he shot the film simultaneously on film and digital, which makes absolutely no sense with both cameras right next to each other.
Seriously?
Yes. And people were telling him, what are you doing with your life? What is the point of this?
Yeah, he was one of those people that, didn't know what he was doing, but he wouldn't let anybody who did know what they were doing take over. Like, he had to have all the control. And he would make, script changes, the day of, minutes before
That
the
sounds
scene
Lucas-like.
It's unlike
I think
any
Tommy Wiseau's more
filmmaker.
talented than
I mean,
George
yeah.
Lucas.
Infinitely more likable.
Yeah.
So anyway, the new movie's going to come
The
out.
Room is better than Attack of the Clones.
And it's directed by Gary Fong.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with him.
Let
It
me
was shot
see
very
that.
quietly. but it doesn't actually. The sources that I have here aren't being too forthcoming about when the movie's coming out.
Right. They said distribution's still kind of in the works.
Yeah, and all I need to know is that it's happening. I'm excited.
And I'm excited for James Franco's portrayal of Tommy Wiseau in the film version of
The
Disaster Artist.
Yeah, that's Sistero's book.
Oh God, that's it's in the Masterpiece. It was previously called the Disaster Artist. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's going to be called the Masterpiece.
Yeah,
which that is awesome.
And they start shooting, I think, in 2 months. So
oh my God! So, yeah, fucking Tommy Wiseau. You know he's gone after people on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, seriously, he's done.
Well, he thinks he's a genius. That's the problem. Like when people think that they're geniuses, they always, want to.
Yeah, Kanye West hasn't figured that one out yet, though.
Hey guys, when you're a genius like him, you have to go the extra mile. One may even say 88 miles in order to save your place in time. Speaking of that, Back to the Future.
You didn't even realize it was happening. You were in the middle of it, and it just dawned on you.
Just
That's
like,
how good he is.
88, motherfucker. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, so that's the episode this week. Brian, why don't you do the honors?
Do the honors?
You make it sound like the episode's over.
The episode isn't over?
No, to introduce it. Like, what are we doing here?
Oh, it sounded like you were wrapping
I was like, what the shit?
Well,
What?
that's our episode.
Thank you, everybody. Make sure to watch us and listen on Twitter and like us on MySpace.
Yeah, so because we like us on MySpace, seriously? You going back in time for that too? So
how else am I supposed to pick fights with high school kids?
Oh, believe me, there are multiple ways nowadays. So yeah, we spent the past couple weeks kind of just going on a horror movie rant, with talking about our top 3 favorite horror movies, talk about Blair Witch,
a little bit of spookiness,
some
for the
vampire
season.
movies, and we're definitely going to get back to that next week with our pantheon of utter shit film for Halloween.
It's coming,
and it's a goodie. We're not going to give it away yet what it is, but definitely keep an eye out for it. So, but we figured because of the timing, and it actually worked out perfectly, because this episode comes out on October 21st, which is Back to the Future Day from last year.
Yeah. October 21st, 2015, approaching Hill Valley at 4:59 p.m.
Yeah,
I believe so.
So
I might not have the time exactly.
I think you'll be forgiven for that. So yeah, we figured why not do a Back to the Future kind of trilogy retrospective type dealy.
Not only one of the best
in honor
films
of
ever,
Back to the Future
but
Day
best
2016.
trilogies. Yes.
So lots happened in the year since Doc Brown and Marty came to the future. We don't have hoverboards still.
No, but we do have the self-lacing, sneakers.
For like $20,000?
Yeah, but you got to spend $20,000. That's not fair.
Yeah. What does Antonio Brown have a pair of the Pittsburgh Steelers? I think he bought a pair.
Can I borrow them?
Yeah. Somebody on the Steelers did. But they're intended for slam ball, not football. Come on.
Just saying.
Come on,
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And, we still don't have Jaws 19.
No, we're not up to 19.
We're not up to 19. Don't have flying cars.
This is getting shittier and shittier, you guys. I don't know.
I figured after.
I don't think having 15 more or 14 more Jaws movies is a bad thing.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
No, but
we were
you know
lied
what they
to.
did
We
get.
were lied
You know
to.
what they did get right though? A bajillion Fast and Furious films. And a bajillion.
That's what it should have been.
And a
That would've been
bajillion. What other movie? Transformers films. Yeah.
Ooh.
Bajillion.
Hey, as long as those movies make a gajillion dollars in China, they'll keep pumping out those Transformers movies. But when Marty goes into the future, there are payphones, which is amazing.
And faxes.
Yeah.
Hey,
faxing is still a thing.
You still
my
use faxing
fax.
in your 9 to 5.
Yeah. Probably one of the best films of the 1980s, let alone ever.
Oh, series.
Let's, not always intended as a trilogy. So let's go back, shall we? To 1985, July 3rd, 1985. Back to the Future hits movie theaters. #1 movie in the country for, I think, well through September.
Well, it's the #1 movie in the country, both the week you were born and the week that Brian and I were born.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
So, number one movie in the country when both of us were born, or all three of us, excuse me.
85 was a good year.
Yeah, it was.
It was a fucking awesome year.
So old, you guys. So number one movie.
Yep.
So basically, the whole film revolves around two BFFs, Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. Well, two BFFs until Robert Zemeckis became rich enough to drive Bob Gale out in the middle of nowhere, so he couldn't find his way home.
Like an abandoned puppy.
Yeah, as soon as he got famous enough, he ditched Bob Gale like a bad habit, and Bob Gale just went around saying, "I wrote Back to the Future." It's like, we know, Bob.
I wrote Back to the Future. Ever tell you about that?
Yeah.
That motherfucker Zemeckis.
You're making a video game of Back to the Future? Can I write it?
Can I write a video
Fine,
game?
Bob.
So
yeah,
mean
the
to
two
Bob Gale.
Bobs. But yeah, they were, two buddies. They had made used cars, which was a minor hit, and nothing to shake the foundation. And then they wrote Back to the Future because I think it was Zemeckis more than Bob Gale who thought the idea of, what if you could go back and see what your parents were like when they were younger? Were they such squares back then? Were they different people? Like, what would that be like to be able to travel back? And then it just, evolved, piece by piece, and just kept, getting a little bit different from there. And before long, they had a story of a bootlegging teenager who hangs around with an old man and goes into a refrigerated time machine and goes back to, stop the murder of his father. And they said, well, you know what? Maybe kids are going to jump into refrigerators and kill themselves, and maybe bootlegging VHS tapes doesn't make him a hero, and maybe
What's
we
a
should take the
VHS
murder
tape?
out.
Yes, please explain what a VHS tape is.
A VHS tape.
To our very early millennial audience.
We used to watch things on giant toaster-like machines, and VHS was the main source of doing that because they offered porn instead of beta.
It's true.
Which did not offer porn, so they won, and then that became DVDs. If you don't know what that is, it was a Blu-ray. If you don't know what that is, it's digital content.
That was a very confusing history lesson, but we'll move on.
Thank you.
Yes.
Porn.
Porn.
But no studio actually wanted this movie. No studio wanted to touch it.
No studio ever wants the good ones. You
No,
ever
they
notice
don't.
That? Like,
They
George
never do.
Lucas took Star Wars to like 19.
Same with
distribution
Batman.
Yeah,
The first
yeah,
Batman,
totally.
it took like almost 20 years for them to make that fucking film.
So nobody wanted none
The
of
original
that.
Ninja Turtles was an independent movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
But in the height of turtle fever, but which is a debilitating disease, I think, in South America. Turtle fever. But the only studio that showed any interest in it was Disney. Because no studio wanted a time traveling, like a happy-go-lucky time traveling family movie. It's just that's not going to work. But Disney thought, that's right up our alley, until they saw the kind of incestual undertones of the movie.
Yeah, they
were like, we're
shit
out
right there.
But then Zemeckis did a clever move and went off to direct Romancing the Stone, which then put him on the map as like a director to be noticed. And they said, well, what would you like to do now? No, Back to the Future. Bob Gale has just been, sitting in the attic, rocking himself back and forth, waiting for this movie to be made.
It's going to happen, guys, I'm telling you.
Eating his fish heads. So, and, the film went into production, but not originally with Michael J. Fox. It was actually famed actor and known douchebag Eric Stoltz, who...
Wow. Wow, someone does not like Eric Stoltz.
Well, I mean,
No,
I understand the method approach to acting, and there's classical acting and there's method acting, and a lot of like Dustin Hoffman and Daniel Day-Lewis, they will immerse themselves completely in the role, and that's method acting. Like if they have to be in a wheelchair, they'll stay in the wheelchair the entire time they shoot the movie. Whatever the situation may be. If they're not English and they have to have an English accent, they'll stay in that accent the entire movie. They'll stay the character that they're portraying. Now, Eric Stoltz came from that kind of school and decided that he was going to play Marty with such sincerity and demanded everybody on set refer to him as Marty to such an absurd level when the film is a comedy about time travel. You need to just tone it down, Eric, and relax. You don't have to have everybody call you Marty. And I mean, he played the film with such kind of a moroseness because of the fact that he realized what a lot of us did at the end of the movie. Marty has no history because everything around him changed, but he has still his old memories. And so Eric Stoltz was like, whoa, how sad is that? I'm just heartbroken about that. So I'm going to play
Instead
him
of just
with the
kind of
infinite
like-
sadness. Yeah.
Instead of kind of just looking at it as, well, your life just got better
Yeah.
from your trip. Like, that's the way I looked at it was, you know, you came from a shitty situation, and yeah, that old history doesn't exist anymore, but maybe that gives you an appreciation for the new history from the consequences of his
Right,
actions.
and I mean, whether or not, you know, you disagree or agree with his motivation, I mean, to play the character to that level of method, and I mean, we've talked about method acting in the past, but I mean, to try to play this role as, you know, a sad, like, morose kind of, you know, demeanor to it, like, that doesn't work. It's a fucking time travel movie, dude. Lighten up,
and
bro.
it's supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
Lighten up, bro.
Get it.
But,
Yeah, bro.
But they were watching the dailies, and they realized, okay, this just isn't working. You know, this guy is kind of a bag of tools.
It's kind of a downer.
So they recast both Marty and Jennifer, and
Yeah, you know, Claudia Wells, who got the part, she just did an interview, actually. She just did an interview with the Australia Daily Telegraph, and she said that, like, she got the role because she'd been passed up before when Eric Stoltz was still doing it, and then when they went to to Michael J. Fox, they had hired a girl who was 5'7" to play the other girlfriend, or to play Jennifer before. She was 5'3", and they casted her because she paired better with Michael J. Fox. And she said that he was actually, like, one of her first kisses, like, ever.
Wow.
And he, like, you know, and she said it was a bunch of, like, first on the set, you know, she was, like, talking about how, you know, he'd put his hand in the back pocket of her jeans like a real boyfriend. Like, she gave the cutest interview. That was such an 80s thing, you know, putting
your hand in the back pocket.
Yeah, that was an 80s thing.
Robert
especially in the
Zemeckis'
movies.
butt was one of Bob Gale's first kisses.
Oh, John.
Jeez, you're just unrelenting today, huh?
Yeah, you know,
mean to the Bobs.
I love Bob Gale. I should really kind of take it easy. Anyways, so yeah, they recast Michael J. Fox, who they wanted originally, but he had to turn it down because, you know, his commitment to television. But
Family
time. I don't know why we all did that, but we did.
It was awesome.
But he
Just
would.
go with it.
They would pick him up in a station wagon with blankets in the back. So he would sleep on his way to the set of Back to the Future, film all night, get back in the station wagon, sleep, and then arrive back at the Family Ties thing. All he did was work and sleep, occasionally pooping and eating, I'm sure, too, somewhere in there.
There's some pooping and eating there.
Yeah. Maybe he just pooped while filming.
Maybe he pooped while sleeping. No judgment.
Yeah.
man.
Or he could have eaten while pooping.
But
Oh.
That's like
like a
in,
tit-mouse?
out. Yeah.
Fruit Loops on the can is what I'm picturing.
like a titmouse. But anywho, but yeah, the funny story is when they fired Eric Stoltz, they went up to Christopher Lloyd and they said, "Hey, just to let you know, we had to let Eric go." And he said, "Who?" Like Eric, and he's like, "I got nothing." And he's like, "The guy playing Marty." He's like, "Oh," he's like, "I thought his name was Marty."
Because that's all he would fucking
That's all he would
answer
go.
to.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's such,
He's like, "I had no
That's such
idea.
a
I
dick
thought his name was Marty."
oh my god.
But yeah, and then obviously, you know, Michael J. Fox was lightning in a bottle. It was exactly who should be playing the character.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And, you know, it revolves around a young man who is like any 3-act structure, you know, going through a hard time. He can't get to school in time. He has trouble with principals, trouble with parents.
He just wants to rock.
He just wants to rock, and if he would just turn his cassette into the record company.
Yes, the record
as Jennifer
company.
says, the record company. Very
So
80s,
priceless.
you know.
Yeah.
He
and he can't. He's like his band. What's his band called?
the Pinheads.
The Pinheads. Yes.
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly's favorite band.
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly's favorite band. You know, he gets
They're
passed
just
over.
too darn loud.
They're just too darn loud.
Yeah.
You know, he gets passed over. It's just, it's a shitty. He has like a shitty day, and on top of that, you know, he wants to go to the mountains with his girlfriend
To
and
take her to the bone zone.
That is heavily implied.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's pretty much what's happening. Whenever you say you're going to the mountains, it's we're gonna go fuck. Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, what? That does not seem very universal to me. Were
Usually,
they going to the lake?
the lake,
The
yeah,
lake
like
and the
mountainy,
mountains.
lakey
Well, is it the
area.
lake or the mountains, boys?
It's both.
What hole is going to be plugged, depending on what you say? I need to know.
Are
It's
you
like
trying
the
to say
code.
mountains are anal, lake is vagina?
I said nothing. I'm wondering about these things.
Deep woods is shoulder blades.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, he finds that
just let me know what the foot is, baby.
he finds that his dad's boss, Biff
Tannen,
basically Donald Trump in 1985. And we're not even kidding. Like it's pretty spot on.
The Biff in the second movie they have said was literally based on Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But that's 1989.
Pretty much, he wrecks the car. And his dad's kind of a doormat, doesn't really. He's like, oh, well, he's my manager, and I just have to listen to him. I don't like confrontations. And, his mom's kind of like just going through the motions in the marriage.
Yeah, drunken, bitter old witch.
Drunken, bitter. Her brother's in jail, jailbird Joey.
Yeah. Nothing's working out.
It's
for
just
the
a
McFlys.
terror. Yeah, they're not. It's not good.
And then Marty is at it's past midnight. Is it 2 or 1 a.m. I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is to go meet Doc at the Twin Pines Mall.
It's important.
Yeah,
that the name is called Twin Pines.
And we never ever get a satisfactory explanation on why these two are hanging out together.
No, it just seems kind of weird.
Speculated quite a bit.
And when you, in retrospect, you think about it, you're just like, so how the fuck did Marty meet Doc? And
I just assume Marty got in trouble and they made him do community service, and it was
hang out with that Doc Brown.
Doc Brown
guy.
needs like an assistant, so you're gonna go do that, and they kind of hit it off. And he's like, "Hey, help me with my future experiments," or either that.
You gotta
or
say it in the Doc Brown voice.
You have to help me with my experiments.
See, yeah. Anytime you mention Doc Brown, you gotta do it in that voice.
You're gonna see some serious shit.
Doc. Are you going to take off your pants, Doc?
Whoa. Come on. This is going to be the longest.
It's heavily implied,
Guys,
isn't it?
this is going to be the longest episode we've ever done anyway. Let's try to move it along.
But we find out that Doc Brown has invented a time machine, which he tests on his dog when he has the car remote controlled. He didn't need to put anybody in the car
Poor
except the
Einstein.
stopwatch. But he still takes a chance with his own dog.
He just wanted to see if a human, some type of animal could survive.
I guess it's like back like when we were in the race to the moon, and we used to put like dogs and monkeys on spaceships.
No. Everything about that, the way that that's going to end, I don't want to talk about that. No.
Okay. But
Because they all died.
not all of them, I don't think.
Not all
I'm
of
sure
them.
Mr. Bubbles made it
Well,
back.
all of them are dead now.
They
so let's
just
move on.
left them. They just left them. Okay? They all survived. They just died in space.
The way real monkeys all want to go out. But
Oh, God.
But he discovers that, the time machine does work. You can either go forward or backwards, and the time machine is run on plutonium. Mm-hmm. So Doc got this by knocking off some Libyans.
He stole it from Libyan terrorists.
Which, a few things.
He told them that he would build him a bomb, but he just made him a shiny bomb casing with used pinball machine parts.
Use pinball machine parts.
Oh, God.
Doc, did you rip this off? But it ends up with Doc getting shot up, and then Marty accidentally traveling back to 1955 without any plutonium. Back in, he's still in Hill Valley. His parents grew up there. So shenanigans ensue where he meets his parents. He accidentally prevents the first encounter, true encounter. I mean, they went to school together, but the first true intimate encounter between his folks.
Basically,
He prevents them from falling in love.
yeah, he prevents the George McFly from peeping in and getting hit by, Lorraine's car, father's car.
He's a peeping Tom.
He really is.
Yeah, but which causes his mom to want to take him to the Bone Zone, which
Her own kid.
which is
Yeah.
How do we just let this slide?
Well, I can see why Disney passed.
Yeah.
And this is what I would just like to say. I have several instances of this that I would like to explain. I do not like the portrayal of women in any of these movies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're
I
pretty
think
bad.
they're horribly
How
portrayed.
about the portrayal of anybody that's not a white male in a Robert Zemeckis movie?
I'm not talking about a broad scope necessarily. We are talking about the Back to the Future trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about just this one situation.
Yeah.
Zemeckis is not great at diversity, to say the least.
He's unbelievably horrible because if
He's
you
awful.
look at the black people in the movie, Goldie Wilson is as a mayor corrupt and horrible.
Right.
As a young man, he is a stereotype. Because that's how Robert Zemeckis portrays, black people. And black people only got rock and roll because a white man named Marty McFly gave it to them.
Right. But like I said, I'm just talking about my perspective on things here. I mean, I agree with you. But not to derail my point too much here by talking about other stuff.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to add to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and like I said, the portrayal of different groups is not good. But I think that what happens in these movies is that every woman suffers from hysterical bitch syndrome.
Please explain what
on,
hysterical
go on.
bitch syndrome is.
It takes different forms. Hysterical bitch number 1, Lorraine. So we always talk about that test, like, can you say anything about a character without mentioning their outfit or their occupation? Can you say anything about young Lorraine except that she's horny? Is there any other way to describe her?
No.
Right?
No.
And so that we'll start with Lorraine. She's the first offender of this because her entire character is just being horny all the time, which is fine. But it's not given to her in a situation of power. It's played for comedy because obviously she's lusting after her son, and that's icky.
Yeah.
So,
But in her defense, she doesn't know.
she doesn't, but she
that's her
she has
son.
no other aspects to her personality.
She knows that she has some kind of intimate connection with that young man. She just and she's misconstruing it as lust because obviously it can't be my son. They actually say that's a common thing when people, they give away their children for adoption and then they meet them as adults. Sometimes people get very confused, and psychologists say it's not as disgusting as we think as long as you don't act on it, but they end up lusting after, their children because it's just misplaced affection that's, not, they don't know how to properly,
but in this
understand
case,
it.
since this is a
In this
Zemeckis
case,
film,
kinda
she's
weird.
She's at best hysterical, and at worst, she's a hypocrite because what this is all talking about is in the the like present in 1985. She's really on Marty's case because his girlfriend's kind of modern, and like I think maybe she asked him out or something like that.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Well, she was calling him.
And he was calling the house.
She was
Yeah.
saying that
Yeah.
she never called a boy or
Right.
went up to the lake with a boy
Parked
or
in a
anything.
car with a
Parked in
boy.
a car with a boy. Yeah, all
right,
that
and
stuff.
she's lying because we find out that those things are all true because she admits to Marty that she's parked before when they're in 1955. So,
Well, I think with
drinks
her
booze
character,
and,
I see her as someone who exists within this perfect idyllic, family unit. You could say that. Even though the dad's kind of, like a Archie Bunker type and that sort of thing. You would call their family quote unquote normal. Okay?
I don't know if we call him an Archie Bunker type.
He just kind of has that kind of look to him.
Well, he's not. I wouldn't call him like a racist.
No, but I guess
just like a gruff, like 50s.
like I guess like a honeymooners type is more of a appropriate.
Yeah.
Right, but-
Jackie Gleason type.
But anyway, what I'm saying and what prevents me from fully connecting with these movies is that there's no female
Right.
character in any of the movies that I can relate to that isn't a hysterical bitch. And I will go
Well,
on as we go on. and I
Jennifer
will-
isn't too bad. She's only in the movie for about 4 minutes, but
Well, in the second movie, the second form of hysterical bitch takes place where
yeah.
she's a hysterical bitch in the sense that everything
we'll
makes her
get there.
shocked and pass out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
well, Doc basically
My
makes her pass
my basic
out, but-
point with Lorraine, and I'll end it with this, is just I see her as basically challenging that idyllic nature that she lives in. That's why she does things counter to, I guess, what would be considered appropriate, like the whole drinking, stealing
Right,
the
and
liquor,
all of that is-
and the
is
lusting
fine. It
thing,
just-
which you wouldn't say would necessarily be quote unquote, I guess, appropriate for 1955.
Right. And if there was something more to her character that made her a rebel, I could totally be on board with that. But like she just has no personality.
No, they didn't put anything
and
else into
not
it.
to say that the actress didn't do a wonderful job. I mean, she was amazing.
Yeah.
She's wonderful in these movies, but they didn't give her that much to work with.
Can we travel back in time to a couple minutes ago? I've always wanted to ask this question. When Doc has the car pointed at them, and the car could make it up to 88 miles per hour before he flips that switch and has it come at them.
You mean when Einstein's in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now his house is burnt down. He's lost the majority of his fortune. He's completely hit. He's at rock bottom. Was Doc trying to commit suicide? Like, if his time machine works, great. If it doesn't, then it's going to kill him.
That's pretty dark.
That is dark. I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think he thought it would work. I think he probably calculated the distance
And he would never risk
it would
Marty's
take.
life
No,
that
he
way.
wouldn't risk his friend's life. I mean, if anything, he would not invite Marty, and then he'd just, say, like, I'm going to go ahead and stand 1 foot, in front of where I think it's going to hit 88.
Yeah.
And end it there. But no, I don't think he's trying to kill
No,
himself.
I don't either.
It's an interesting.
It is an
thing to
interesting
ask, I
thing to ask,
Yeah, you're
but
a dark SOB.
Jesus Christ, man. So just to close out Back to the Future before we jump to number 2.
Oh, are we jumping
Well,
that quick? Or?
You don't understand. John could talk for 8 hours.
I know you could talk for 8 hours,
about
but I don't think our listeners want to listen to us talk about Back to the Future for 8 hours.
So let's just kind of we meet Biff Tannen, who is very important. We meet him through all of different years in these films.
Yep.
Who he stands in the way of Marty trying
He's the
to
villain in
reconcile
every film.
his parents. Yeah, and
he's kind of a rapist.
Yeah, and they
No, he's a rapist.
Yeah, he's a raper.
And it comes down to the big dance, and
that's where his parents are supposed to meet. And this whole time, there's a photograph that Marty has of him and his siblings, and they keep disappearing
because he's altered the timeline, and he's prevented his parents from meeting, which would prevent his birth and his siblings' birth. So the whole movie kind of rests on him making his parents get back together, and then getting back to his own time.
Which actually seems silly, because Doc should have realized, you travel back here without any way to get home. If he didn't screw up the things with his parents, wouldn't it have been just easier for Doc to kill him and then let the natural progression of things happen?
Holy shit!
Well, no, I mean, Marty would
have to die.
Wait a minute. Marty would have existed naturally through the course of time, and he would have known not to go to the Twin Pines Mall. Doc wouldn't have that night, and then Marty never would have gone back to 1955 in the first place.
That sounds like something that would be on Rick and Morty.
No, I've gone cross-eyed.
It would. I mean, the thing is, if Marty had died,
you're right.
Mattered. Like, he would have still been born naturally through the course of time anyways.
Well, why don't we do all of that, but we don't kill Marty?
No, you got to kill Marty.
Well, then what? Marty's just going to exist in 1955 until he grows old?
Well, until he doesn't. If you have, Doc not go back in time, you just have to wait.
You got to understand here. In most time travel movies, okay, the existence of that Marty would be a paradox. And it would probably do something like destroy the space-time continuum. I could just imagine that would be it, okay?
See, I don't know if our listeners have this problem, but John wants to talk about time travel all the time. And he wants to talk about these movies all the time. And I hate talking about time travel for this very reason.
Well, actually, just by rewatching this recently, I did discover that Doc said it has a lead protection around the plutonium. Because for the longest time, I thought, why doesn't Marty have, lymphoma from plutonium going off around his body?
Lead.
Yeah, thankfully it was lead based, so he's all right. So he has to get back. Thankfully, he knows the exact time that a lightning bolt's going to hit the clock tower, and they're going to use that to get the 1.21 gigawatts of energy into the DeLorean.
That's the only thing that can replicate the plutonium. No, you can't.
So he makes sure his parents get back together. He invents rock and roll for black people. And
Jesus
Christ. It is. I mean,
it's true. It actually does happen.
Barry.
Yeah, it actually does happen.
It's really bad.
And then, they time it just right, except for the fact that while you know the exact minute it hits, there's 60 seconds in a minute. So you do not know precisely in that 60 seconds when it hits. There was no second hand.
Well, they fucking nailed it.
I'm going to be honest with you, man. That's really overanalyzing.
This is what he likes to talk about all the time in our free time.
I don't think they were going that far in.
It's really bad.
But Marty travels back to time. And here's where Crispin Glover, who plays Marty's dad, gets very pissed off. Because this is Ronald Reagan's America. So the idea of the good life, because he changed everything. At the beginning of the movie, he crashes at Peabody's farm. He takes out a pine tree, so the Twin Pines Mall becomes the Lone Pine Mall. So you can see there's repercussions to what Marty did. And when he wakes up in the morning, oddly enough, he still has the same Pepsi can in the exact same place on his bed stand.
Almost like they had the same set and didn't feel like changing it.
Yeah, apparently
it would
he
be
did
funny if that
every
turned
single
into a
single
Coke.
thing. Yeah, yeah, it should
That would have been funny. Pepsi's for poor people.
But they did have Budweiser and Miller in the movie, which I found very odd. They must have just somehow gotten both of them to fork money up.
Probably.
But, now they're, mom's not an alcoholic. Dad's not a wuss anymore. They don't live in
Mom's gotten real
squalor.
skinny.
Yeah. Yeah, mom is still like hot from when she was younger, and they have a lot of things. And Crispin Glover freaked out because he said, "Oh, so what you're basically saying is that happiness is based on money, success, power, and things."
In 1985, that was
that's how they saw the world.
That was the image.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that's the reality. I'd say that's the image.
And Lane, you had an interesting take on this.
It's funny because like I saw this like completely differently because I thought that like. The events of Marty going back in time, like they lead this new George McFly to become an author, and I thought that him having an outlet for creativity and him being a writer made him so much happier. It built his self-esteem, and I never saw it as like, they have a nicer life.
I mean, I kind of saw it more in line with
I just
your
always thought that he was
thinking.
more fulfilled, and that's why his marriage was so good, and that's why his life was so good. So I saw it very differently. I mean, they have. I think it's hard for me too because like when you watch this, you look at the difference, and certainly it's different, and you can kind of say cerebrally, okay, like they must be richer now, but it's all the 80s and everything's ugly either way. So
it's true. A lot of
matter,
pastels.
but no, I mean from an honest place, I always just thought he was more fulfilled, and
right.
that was why things were so much better because he just, he and his,
he got to be himself.
Yeah, and his parents just seemed like they had a good time together, and
And his siblings all had good jobs, and
his brother originally was working like a fast food place. Now he's working at an office. Yeah. What are you wearing? Marty, I always wear a suit to the office.
You can do the whole movie.
We're kind of forgetting the biggest problem with this movie is that our main character has no arc.
Oh, yeah. I didn't forget.
Marty has absolutely no character
arc.
Because
the
thing is, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, they set it up perfectly in the beginning where he needs to, like, give his tape to the record company and blah, blah, blah. And they even have, like, pinpoints to it, where, like, he talks to his dad about, being rejected, like, by a publisher. And, like, they have very similar feelings. Like, his dad thinks that his writing's going to be rejected the same way that Marty thinks that
that's why I wanted
he's
to
going to be
piggyback
rejected
off
by, music, but there's no finish to that
part
of the
Here's an
storyline
interesting
for
question
Marty.
for you, though. Is this actually George McFly's story?
Yeah, I mean,
I would say more his story
I think he's
than
the one
anything.
that has the arc. I mean, you have to go with that.
The only thing I will say in defense of Marty's character in the film, his arc is more that he appreciates his parents more so by the end of the movie than he did at the beginning. He but he looks down on his father. He looks at his situation with his mother's an alcoholic, and he's got the all around the situation isn't great in his family life. He looks at especially with his father. Okay, and by the end of the movie, he has more of an appreciation for his father because he saw him as a young man, saw the type of life he went through, and got to know him better. So that's kind of the way I look at it, is that's kind of his arc. They don't expressly go ahead and make it as black and white as that. I just know that for me, that's the takeaway I got from
right.
it.
And it does go back to Zemeckis and Gale's original thought of like, what if you could be friends with your parents when you were in high school?
Well, if you follow, this film very much follows the classic 3-act structure.
Definitely.
And in the first act, you have an inciting incident, and you have a lot of times, this isn't an actual term, but inciting remarks. And S.S. Strickland, the principal, says, "No, McFly, you're a slacker. Your whole family are slackers. No McFly has ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley." And Marty says, "Yeah, well, history is going to change."
And it does.
But the thing is, it does for George.
But is it the McFly family story, though? Because, I mean, Marty's story isn't finished yet. He doesn't, go on to a job or anything.
But wouldn't it be the arc for Marty at the end of the movie is that he puts his tape into the record company and they say they want to hear more of his work because he had the guts to become a rock star?
That's how it should have ended.
That's how it should have ended, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they had to leave it open for a sequel.
Well, the thing is, they actually didn't leave it open for a sequel, and that's what's interesting, because George has, he stands up to the bully, so he gains confidence. He's not afraid of rejection. He becomes a successful author, so it's more George's story. But at the end of the movie, that whole ending to that movie was a joke. It was one final gag. Yeah. And the idea, the absurdity of traveling into the future to fix something, which is stupid, that's the whole idea. It's a joke, and then it ends on that note. And the movie was so successful that for VHS copies of the film, I think we said this in an earlier episode of the podcast, they threw "to be continued" onto there because they're like, oh, we need to pretend like this was purposeful all along. It was never intended to be the beginning of a sequel, because why would you start a movie like that if you plan to make a sequel? But they threw "to be continued" on there, and so the second film had to pick up where the other one left off. And so it does. And they decided to make a cartoon version of Back to the
Here's
Future.
the thing,
second
man.
one.
I will say this. I love Back to the Future Part 2.
But can we say this?
I really love
Can we
Back to the Future
say
Part
that Back?
This one's my favorite. It's always been my favorite.
It's a near flawless film. It's amazing. But can we please admit that while we love Back to the Future 2 and 3, they're not good movies?
They are. And I can't admit that. I can admit
They're
that.
cornball schlock.
Listen, I can admit that.
I love them, but
listen, I can admit that with Part 3, because one, I'm not a big fan of westerns, and I mean, I know they did the whole western thing, and I really don't care about Doc Brown's love interest deal thing going on. I think it's kind of forced. But I personally love number 2. I love number 2 because it does what a sequel should by expanding it out a bit. Okay? Because you could admit that, part 1 tells a complete story from beginning to end. I mean, yes, we would have loved it if they went ahead and had that whole record. He sends in his tape, even if it was just something simple like, I'm going to go ahead and fill out an envelope.
Yeah, the record company puts it in the mailbox.
Puts it in the mailbox, and that's it. And then Doc Brown shows up with his goofy glasses and his new futuristic clothing and says, "You're going to come back with me, Marty. It's your kids. Something's got to be done about your kids." But
Marty, what if they reject you? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
But I love part 2 mainly because it's not afraid to be goofy. Okay, they could have chosen a couple things for the future. They could have chosen to do a dystopian future, like Blade Runner, that sort of deal, or they could have chose to do something that was more in line with Jetsons. Okay, and they chose to do with something that was more in line with Jetsons. So I like the fact
fits more the tone of these films.
Yes, it does. So I love the fact. I mean, you do kind of get that dystopian future thing, but you get it more with the present. But I love the fact that it expands on the characters a bit. Okay, you find out more about Biff, to some degree. Okay. It focuses more on his character.
It
focuses more on Marty.
Plot holes in these movies.
Well, of course, there's plot holes in this movie.
If you would,
you've got a list. Do you have a list of plot holes?
Microphone here, so apologize for anyone who heard that. So here's just a couple plot holes I found.
Oh God.
It's incredible that with all the other things that changed in their lives, having 3 kids exactly the same way they did before did not change for the McFlys. Why does George McFly let his wife's attempted rapist work outside the house? Why does Doc come back to fix something that happens in the future when you could just tell them and they wouldn't do it in the first place? If Marty goes to the future from 1985 to 2015, would he not be pronounced dead and not exist in 2015? Why does Doc bring Jennifer along at all? How does Doc not realize that he would be on the wrong side of the road when he enters 2015? Why does Doc knock out Jennifer? Why not bring her at all? Why do they leave Jennifer's unconscious body outside by itself? Why does Doc wait until 10 minutes before the plan to knock out Marty's son? Why does Marty's son look exactly like him? Biff shows no signs of having kids, but yet he has a grandson. Why does old Biff have the gumption again? Why is Doc so convinced that running into oneself could cause a disruption of time and cell? What does he base that on? Wouldn't Marty remember the day he traveled to 2015? Shouldn't he already know that he's there? Why did Doc take Einstein with him to save Jennifer? Is it so that the car would be alone so Biff could steal it? Why would Marty walk away from a car, let alone a time machine? How does old Biff know how to use a time machine? How did old Biff return to the same timeline if he had altered the past? How didn't Doc notice that the cane, the date on the DeLorean time circuits, the bag and receipt had all been left inside of the DeLorean? Why did they leave Jennifer's unconscious body alone for a second time? Why doesn't Marty react weirder to having bars on the windows to Jennifer's house? How does Doc know that the world will change around Jennifer? What if she was awake when this happens? How did Doc and Marty not notice the entire city was in decay when they returned him to Marty's house? It is awfully convenient that Marty was still born in this alternate universe and was off at boarding school. Why does Marty need to get Biff to give him the date when to go back in time if it's simply on the DeLorean time circuits? Why does Biff tell him all the information he needs if Biff plans to kill him the entire time? Why do Marty and Doc need to go the exact date Biff got the book in the first place if he doesn't win his money for another 4 years? They have all the time in the world, but they act like it has to be done that night. Why not send Doc after Biff? Biff doesn't exactly know what Doc looks like, let alone instead of using Marty. Why why is Marty being upset over being called chicken? Seems like a strange way to create a character arc and then allow Biff to get the almanac back right before they're about to leave with it off of the roof of the gymnasium. Why is Biff still tough after getting punched when I thought the whole point was that when he got knocked out, he became a coward? Why do Doc and Marty have to go to the exact location that they started in the beginning when they got to 1955, especially with the storm coming? Why doesn't Doc just land immediately instead of allowing it to become dangerous? Why doesn't Marty start a fire inside of a wind and rainstorm? Why not take the sports almanac back to 1985 and then destroy it? How did Doc travel through time by getting hit by lightning when he wasn't going 88 miles per hour? Boy, it sure was convenient that Doc traveled in time to the exact place he said he always wanted to go. And why did Marty read the only piece of information pertaining to how he can get home in the pouring down rain? Other than that, no plot holes.
This is my everyday.
Okay, I have one answer for you. Okay,
One?
Is it your middle finger?
No,
Your middle finger.
no. And you could call this a gimme, okay, or a cop out. It's 2 words. Okay. Suspension of disbelief.
That's 3 words.
You are such
No,
a prick. Why do you have any friends?
Disbelief is
Of disbelief.
all right. Fuck you then. Okay.
Right? Why does this
There's the middle finger.
Why does this guy have friends?
Yeah. Suspension of disbelief. Okay. You're dealing with a fucking time travel movie. Okay. I could easily. I mean, there's no way to go through that entire fucking list. I'm sure some of our listeners will try to.
That'd be awesome. Please do.
Yeah. Okay. If you want to go ahead and spend the time and a lot of time needed to go through each one of John's, remarks on all the plot holes in part 2, please go ahead. We'll post your answers to it, I guess. But I'm just saying, it's a fucking time travel movie. All right? It's a fucking time travel movie. Okay? There's going to be more plot holes than any movie at all because it's a fucking time travel movie. Okay? You don't have to understand it. You just watch the shit. It quite literally, for me, it makes sense because I just, one, it's nostalgia. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I saw part 2 before I saw part 1. Okay? Just because by the time part 2 came out, I was probably 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
So when part 1 came out, I was barely I didn't exist yet. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna
4 days from being born.
Yeah, you were 4 days from being born. Elaine and I hadn't quite existed yet.
We were still cooking.
All right. But what I'm saying is, part 2, it's got, you could say that the story isn't nearly as strong as part 1 is. Okay, I'll give you that. But what I like about it is it expands on the universe. Okay, it adds more to the characterization of Marty than simply as him just existing. You could say that the fact that, one, he deals, you now have the idea that he never really learned his lesson from his father. Because if you go to his future and you see, oh shit, he kind of became that kind of weakling, that his father was in the first film. And so now it's a matter of, we've got to fix Marty's life. And you don't really get that kind of clarity until part 3. But that's pretty much what it is that you're now focusing the arc back on Marty and not on, say, George. Okay?
And the movie could also have been subtitled Back to the Future 2 Exposition, Necessary Exposition, the movie. Because everything has to be just said awkwardly to explain to the audience what's happening.
Yes. Again, suspension of disbelief.
Nothing like when Lorraine comes in and to the house in the future and explains to everybody that already knows how Marty got hit by a Rolls Royce and had to give up his music career. It's just like, hey, don't we all already know this story? It's almost as if somebody's watching this, like, voyeuristically on a television or a computer screen.
But I mean, you will have to admit that part 2 is very memorable. For a lot of the visual effects they did in that film, a lot of the visualization of the future. I mean, we were talking about it before. A lot of people were like, "What the hoverboard, for instance?" Oh,
I can't stress enough. Like, we talk a lot of film critique on this podcast, and there is a lot to break down. I don't want to say in the negative against Back to the Future 2, but I can't reiterate enough that how much I love this movie. It's goofy. It has 1,000 plot holes.
Yes, it does.
And, they were stuck having to derive a sequel around a joke. And it's like, oh, crap. they're going back to the future, into the future to fix something, and Jennifer's there, and oh fuck, you're like, how do we write around this?
I think they did the best they could.
Well, this is also a good thing to note.
The best they could.
Bob Gale really wrote this. Him and Zemeckis came out with the outline, but Bob Gale actually wrote the actual screenplay. While Zemeckis was off filming Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Okay.
And that's why there's actually such a big gap in 85 to 89 sequel time. That's actually
kind
of a long time
for the 80s. That was a long time. I mean.
And, so I think Bob Gale was clearly, he was kind of like, how Paul McCartney was kind of like the sappy guy and John Lennon was more of like the morose guy. I think Bob Gale was more of the goofy humor side of things, and Zemeckis might have been a little bit more of, I don't want to say edgy with Back to the Future, but,
right.
More so than Bob Gale.
Right.
And this is what happens when you leave Bob Gale to his own devices. You get almost a cartoon version of the first film, which is fine because it still works. It's still fun. It's still, an amazing way to, like you said, up the ante, so to speak.
That's kind of the way I look at it as a successful sequel is, does it up the ante? Does it expand the universe? I think part 2 does. I think part 3 doesn't. Okay. I have more issues with part 3 than I do part 2. Because one, we're the whole part 1 and part 2 basically deal with McFlys. Okay. And part 3, we now have this story where it is, more about Doc Brown. And I understand that, but I always saw Doc Brown as more of a supporting character and not a main character. Okay. I mean, yeah, you could say, well, let's go ahead and expand on his characterization. Let's talk more about his motivation. All we really got from him was that he spent most of his life just focusing on science and has nothing to show for it other than this time machine that he made. Well, he has no family. He has no friends. I mean, aside from the kid that hangs out with him all the time. The
teenage boy he hangs out with.
But there's no love interest,
Which, yeah, and I think the idea is that giving the side plot of Doc and Clara, it keeps it from being too episodic. Keeping it. That's why
I think it makes it more episodic, though.
But I think the idea of just focusing in solely on Marty would have been a detriment. I get very, very annoyed with the third film with the absurdity of the love angle and Doc willing to completely fuck up space and time because the power of boners is strong.
I mean, seriously, like, you want to talk about your plot fucking holes? There you go.
And if we're going to go back to my gripe with the series, I think Clara is the most hysterical bitch of them all.
Golly.
Because she's, like... And I hate the way that they dress her up because it's like Zemeckis thinks we're all fucking stupid. Like, she's into the sciences and she reads Jules Verne. She's smart.
And she's a teacher.
No, at the end of the fucking day, she's more hysterical than any of them because Doc tries to tell her the truth that he's like, I'm
from the future.
I'm from the future. And like, whatever. And she just can't fucking deal with it. Like, she literally can't deal with it. She
doesn't make any sense.
Fun of her and she just like throws him out of her house and cries like, this is not who I need on my TV screen. Like, this is not a great character for me to look up to.
It doesn't make any fucking sense. She's supposed to be a smart scientist person, and wouldn't she be the first one?
Would you believe that he's a time
Maybe
traveler?
not, but I wouldn't burst into tears and kick him out of my house.
You wouldn't go ahead and suddenly jump to, oh, you're making fun of me, fucker. It's like...
It's not even fucker. It's like, oh, you're making fun of me. Like, if there was, like, a fucker implied at the end, then at least she'd have some grit. But she's just, like...
I just take more issue with the fact that her characterization is that she's into the sciences and that's kind of her thing. Wouldn't she be more curious and be more open to the idea that this man is saying he's from the future?
And like, wouldn't he come at her with more science though? Like,
yeah, he would.
He does a shitty job explaining.
He does.
It.
He kind of does like well, Clara, I'm from the future.
Well, he tells her with his dick and not with his brain. That's why.
He is pointing to the North Star.
He is.
Yeah.
But that's my biggest problem with
here's
this film,
Robert
though.
Zemeckis and how he feels about women. Apparently, he doesn't think women can drive because she's supposed to drive into the ravine and die. So women can't drive. Good one, Bob.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, but...
So the idea is now, between these two films, because these were shot back to back.
Yes.
And you get overlapping things all the time. Like Doc is wearing a shirt with Old West trains on it in the second film. He talks about going to 1885 in the second film. The original Pit Bull, which was a hoverboard that Griff, the future Biff was originally supposed to be called a Mad Dog.
Oh, really?
Yep. Which is obviously Mad Dog Tannen, the version of Biff in the Old West.
And also Mad Dog Tannen is mentioned when Marty goes to the alternate 1985 into Biff's casino that
Biff's
he has.
Pleasure Palace.
Biff's Pleasure Palace. God. It's fucking Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It really is.
When he transformed this into Biffco.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah. So, the second film is they go into the future. They go into an alternate 1985 because future Biff gives this young version, which is strange because what is his motive? Because he's essentially committing suicide.
He knows that.
So that another version of him could have a better life. That's kind of selfless because he's not going to know.
He is the benefactor of that, the beneficiary of that gift. I mean, ultimately, his life isn't great. Why not basically, get rid of this life he has? And I mean, as I said, he's not going to exist anymore. Yeah. I'm sure it's painless. Disappearing from existence.
Yeah. Which is a scene they cut out of the film, but they actually have a scene where he fades into nothingness, old Biff.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That would be great.
But, and then so they have an alternate 1985. They realize they have to go back in time, which actually a lot of time travel experts, which is a strange thing to say, have said that they've really lauded Back to the Future for being one of the few films to get time travel right, in the sense that you can have alternate timelines and you have to go back to where the issue started. You can't go back to the future. They have to go back to the past, which they do. They get the sports almanac. They stop Biff. A lot of callbacks to the original film, which, we talk about, sequels are too similar. This is the one franchise that completely gets away with it because it's about time travel and destiny. Instead of having the same thing happen, Biff get covered in manure in 3 films is a good thing because they're calling back. It's almost like it was a historical destiny for that to happen. So I actually think that it's
also
nice that
called
these films are similar.
Motif as
yes, exactly.
Shithead, get it?
But yeah, the third one is completely unnecessary because at the end of the second one, Doc gets struck by lightning. Marty gets a letter that Doc wrote him in the Old West because that's where he is, to be delivered to him at that exact moment. He reads it and finds out, where the DeLorean is being kept. He goes to 1955 Doc and says, hey, you need to help me fix the time circuit so I can get this back, I can get back to 1985. But then they find Doc's grave.
Yeah, they find his grave.
But here's the issue. Just say, hey, Doc,
don't go to the Old West.
Yeah, just don't, if everything happens exactly the way that it did, then we'll just hang out on the roof of the gym and we'll wait the storm out. That way you'll never exist in the Old West. Now I'm going to travel back to 1985 because I fixed everything. Now, and then the roll credits.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Yeah. That would cut the movie down to about, what would you say, 30 minutes?
Yeah, the best part of the movie would have still been seen.
30 minutes.
Instead Doc has to get his D wet, and we have to meet Clara, and Doc decides, in both these movies, he keeps talking about, oh, what a horrible thing I've done making time travel. I thought it would be something to open the world to unlimited possibilities, find out why we're here.
He only starts talking about that in the second film.
Yeah.
He never says that in the first film. He's never I fucking hate time travel that I just created. I never liked that part about Doc. I'm like, come on, man. Well, you made a fucking time machine, for God's sake.
But he realizes the repercussions that time travel can have.
It's still pretty cool. And it fucking flies.
But in the third one, he's like, well, we should get this back to 1985, dismantle it.
That's a terrible idea.
It's just, it causes too many problems. But you know what? I have a boner, and I really want this Clara chick. So fuck all of the things that I wanted to do originally. I just want to stay back and and bang this chick.
Plus, also not get shot.
Yeah, and.
That's important too.
Doc just doesn't apparently care about the whole reason Marty went back in the first place. Oh, I'll still put myself in a situation where I can get shot because once again the power of boners is strong.
Oh, God.
And it's interesting that in the first one they don't have any plutonium, so Marty can't travel back to 1955. In this one they don't have any gasoline. It's kind of like how you look at John McClane. He didn't have shoes in the first movie. In the third one, he was horribly hungover, so he had something working against him. So they have to be powered by the train. They go back to Marty goes back to 1985. Doc stays on the hoverboard with Clara because he can't make it back to the car, and he just says "fuck it" anyway. So I'm going to stay here with Clara.
And then decides to go ahead and create another fucking time machine.
Yeah, well,
because
we'll
he didn't like time travel,
Yeah.
and he decides, hey, you know what, fuck it.
I imagine that was studio
Fuck it.
stuff. We'll get there. Don't
Fuck it.
rush it, Brian.
I'm just saying,
But
I don't like that part.
Marty lands back in Eastwood Ravine because they stopped Clara from going through Clara Ravine, and Clint Eastwood goes over in it, which is Marty McFly's name in the Old West, and so now it's Eastwood Ravine. The DeLorean gets hit by a train, so it is destroyed as Doc wanted, and they realize, we'll never see Doc again. But then all of a sudden, and Jennifer wakes up, or he goes and gets Jennifer. Who's still unconscious.
She's still just hanging out in that porch.
And thank God she didn't wake up and watch the world change around her and slip into madness.
Hey, you know what? Jennifer got to time travel as well. She did it with roofies.
Yeah, imagine she did.
What else does Doc Brown do with that energy beam?
Whoa, all right.
Marty, I've been using it on Clara for poon.
You should not be left to your own devices. This is what we've learned.
I'll take you from the earth to the moon.
I was just say Doc used it to go ahead and get like hookers. You just go down the street, and
Hey, there were hookers in that bar.
In the Old West?
No, in 2015.
Yes, in the Old West. Remember, the bar has an upstairs with whores.
Yeah, and so much syphilis.
That's true. That's what killed Capone.
But Doc Brown probably has a cure for that. In his little handy
case
with the money,
from the
money
on.
Right, but what I'm saying is like with the cash, he's got that briefcase with all the different cash. He's probably got in that briefcase also all the medication you could possibly want.
Yeah. Guys, you've given way too much thought to Doc's imaginary Sif.
He has a briefcase. Yes, we did. But he has a briefcase full of all kinds of money. I'm sure he has all kinds of
That's what I was just saying.
Pills too. Yeah.
That's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Did you zone out when I just said that?
No, I was agreeing
with you. No, he was agreeing.
I was agreeing with you.
I thought you zoned out.
He was explaining it to me, even though I was incredulous.
His Sif pills.
But, so at the very end of the movie, they're like, will we ever see Doc again? And then I am assuming studio interference has Doc show up on a time-traveling train. I
fucking hate that train.
The guy
so much rage.
Spent nearly a year making a refrigerator that makes one ice cube, but he invents a flying time travel train. How long did that take?
Probably about 8 years.
Yeah.
Judging from how old those kids are, my guess would be 8 years.
And he has 2 kids with Clara named Jules and Vernon.
And then that one creepy kid.
He had to pee.
Oh, sure?
I think they asked him, as he got older, and he would have to signal that he had to use the bathroom. That's why he pointed at his dick and gave me the hand signal. He was trying to tell the producers he had to take a piss, but they...
Elaine, about the kid, right? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just watching you both because you're enjoying it so much.
You're just like, come here, look at my dick.
But he introduces them to his kids, and... the facts that Marty in the second film gets fired from his job, when he's at his lowest because Needles, another character in the film, called him chicken.
Who was also his supervisor.
Yes. See you at the plant tomorrow, McFly.
Yeah.
But, the you're fired facts fades away. And then Doc says, your future isn't written. It's what you make of it. And he ends up not racing Needles when he calls him chicken, drag racing him in the street, and he decides to be better than that and doesn't get hit by the Rolls Royce. So I guess we're to assume that he becomes like a big rock star. But the very last scene in the film is Doc flying off, and the train comes right at the camera the way the DeLorean did at the end of the first film, and it's such a schlocky, tacked on producer piece of pandering.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is, where in God's name can Doc go?
Well,
he can't go back to his own time because he's wanted by terrorists. He can't go into the future because why would he have a time traveling train in the future? You can't go back too far into the past before there were trains because you would be decided that you'd be a witch. He has nowhere to go.
Well, obviously, he went back to the future. Okay, because that's how he got the train, able to fly.
Yeah.
Obviously,
He
he
got
got the hover part there. Okay. He didn't invent that in 1885. Okay. But you're right. It is a very tacked on. My only guess is that I think it was what was it, CBS and Amblin Entertainment.
Yes.
Okay. My guess is because of the fact that there was a Back to the Future cartoon coming out around the exact same time.
Yep.
That revolved around Doc Brown on his fucking train.
Executive producer Bob Gale.
Seriously?
Yep.
Okay.
He wrote the video game. He wrote for the cartoon.
That video game is fucking terrible.
He wrote a short film.
I hate that video game. Part 3? Yeah.
Oh, no,
fuck that
no,
game.
the PlayStation 4 game that came out.
Oh, I'm talking about the Genesis.
Oh, he did have some part in that too. Yeah. Bob Gale lives off of his residuals from Back to the Future. But here's something that really bothered me too. Is I know he said he went to a rejuvenation clinic, and I'm sure that did add some years onto his life.
Bob Gale went to a rejuvenation clinic?
No, Doc in the second movie.
Okay.
AKA they actually wrote it in so he didn't have to have the old makeup on in the second movie.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it did make him somewhat younger. But
What about his hair?
He's still a 70-some-year-old man having children.
Yep.
It happens.
It happens.
It's not impossible.
No, it's not impossible. They rejuvenated everything.
Marty, look!
This is the future. You're not telling me he sprung for the full extras package?
My balls no longer hang to my knees!
Little enhancement. I just pressed this button and...
It's time for my wiener to go back! Up!
It's like that movie Space Truckers. You familiar with Space Truckers?
Oh, I've heard of
Yeah,
Space Truckers.
where the one captain played by I forget the name. He's the Lannister guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Game of
the
Thrones,
elder
yeah.
from Game of Thrones has a ripcord to power his dick. I imagine that Doc, he just has a button he just presses. It's like a Bluetooth,
I got a
Bluetooth
hover
his dick.
conversion on my dick.
Bluetooth hover dick.
He
Yeah.
just starts pouring empty Miller Lights into his butt and jamming garbage up there. What are you doing, Doc? I need fuel. That's where this podcast is gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, wonderful trilogy. The first film, nearly a flawless movie. Sequels have their problems, but still awesome.
They're fun movies to watch. I
Yeah,
mean,
they're-
honestly,
You can watch
that's
them
what you could
anytime.
say.
Like if they're on TV, you can just stop what you're doing and watch them. Not every movie has that rewatchability, but all the Back to the Future movies do. Third one probably the weakest, even though it's Christopher Lloyd's favorite.
Is that really Christopher Lloyd's favorite?
He loves westerns, and he loved that Doc got a love interest, so that's why it was his favorite.
Yeah, we actually got to meet Christopher Lloyd
Right.
not too long ago. We
Nice
got his
guy.
autograph
Real
and
nice
stuff.
guy.
He was real cool. And he did a like a question and answer
Did
series.
he do an impression as Doc Brown?
He said a couple of things. I'll tell you what. You know how sometimes people are like, there are no stupid questions. Yeah, there are. Like,
A lot of people that asked these
people
questions were awful.
People just
Were they like,
ask
go
the
ahead and say
dumbest
1.21 gigawatts?
No,
Yeah,
they would ask
no.
very inane questions about time travel or very specific things about the film. It's like, I don't fucking remember.
It was awesome. He
Yeah, I was
gonna
gonna say
I
like,
made like 80 movies, you piece of shit.
He drank people's tears like openly. It was incredible. Because they'd be so nerdy. They'd be like, "Well, remember that certain outfit that you wore? Do you think it was significant that you wore this color in that movie, and then in the 7th episode of Taxi, you wore the same color as well?" Like, I mean, just shit that like nobody would fucking remember. Like, it was ridiculous. And he was just
Wow.
like, and he just would be like, I don't know. Like, it was awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
unbelievable trilogy. Check it out again. If you haven't seen it in a while, if you lived under a rock and you've never seen Back to the Future, go check it out. Go check out The Room. Go check out Back to the Future.
Watch everything and then listen to the rest of our podcast if
Yeah.
you haven't listened to all of them.
Yeah, listen to all the other episodes. Rate them, review them, and
Yes,
then
please
listen
rate
to
and
them
review.
again, and then tell your friends to listen to them.
yeah. So just with that, please be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Google Plus. Does anyone even use Google Plus?
I don't know.
Okay.
But we have it.
We have one at Psycho Show. If you have a favorite movie you would like to go ahead and you want us to review or a question you want to throw to us, you can contact us at our website, cinemapsychoshow.com. You can also find myself on Twitter at Brian Coddington. I'm also on Facebook at Brian Coddington. Where can they find you,
You can find
Elaine?
me on Twitter at LA_Croft.
And you're also part of another podcast. What is that?
Yeah, I'm on Super Serials.
Super Serials.
So if you guys
Amazing
like to,
podcast.
if you guys like to read, be my friend on Goodreads. That's
Definitely.
the social media I open to everyone.
Definitely. So, be sure to subscribe to
Please.
catch our next show, available every Friday.
Good night, you slackers.
No talking about time travel for 2 weeks.
Butthead.